apologies for the bad audio because I forgot my mic at home. Oops. But anyways, today we're going to talk about a film that I have watched a long time ago, and I thought I'd revisit it for Karthi's birthday. Paruthiveeran.
விழாவில் பல பேர் முன்னிலையில் உன் வேட்டி அவிழ்த்து அசிங்கப்படுத்திய போது அமைதியாக இருந்தோம். நாம் ஏமாற்றி சம்பாதிப்பதை இவன் மொத்தமாக சுருட்டிய போதெல்லாம் பொறுமை காத்தோம். பொறுத்தது போது மகனே, பொங்கி எழு. எங்கே உன் உடைவார்? அறுத்து விடு.
Alright, I'm gonna level with you guys here. The first time I watched this movie, I did not like it. I mean, it's basically a tired romance for me, surrounding a bunch of unfathomably stupid characters. Like seriously, bro, what do? Get your shit together, go to school, and get a job. Why are you into this ridiculous jail run? But then I watched this movie again a few more times, and I realized maybe that's the point. I mean, I am an urban girl with my fancy college degree. Do I know anything about what it's like to be a teenager in a rural village in Tamil Nadu? No, I don't know that. So maybe I should not be forcing my morality onto these people. So instead, I decided to watch this with the intent of immersing myself fully into the ideology and the chaos and simpleness of Paruthiveeran. And with that, I absolutely fell in love with this film.
We interrupt this program for an important news announcement.
Hey guys, editing Mathingi here. Just wanted to let you know that I'll be using the Hindi video for most of this, and I'll be imposing the Tamil audio on top of it, and that's because I could not find the Tamil video in good quality anywhere, so sorry for that.
And it was at this point that I truly fell in love with this movie. Every shot is painstakingly taken to present us this village and this way of life. And I think that is a very important aspect of filmmaking. So today, in honor of Karthi's birthday, or whenever I actually end up posting this video, let's talk about Paruthiveeran. So there's a few interesting things that I noticed upon watching this movie. And let's talk about all of them. The first thing that I want to point out is that the pacing for this film is really slow. Actually, it's almost painstakingly slow. But I think that kind of works in its favor, especially for me. I've never lived in a village. I've lived in big cities almost my entire life. So for me, this first shot itself is a huge and large exposition dump, but a visual exposition dump. It starts at a village carnival, and notice how there's a lot of like sweeping crane shots that kind of help establish this large crowd that is present here. And I think that that's something that's really helpful. In fact, we don't get any like perspective of any of the characters in the movie itself during this beginning shot. In fact, the title character itself takes about 10 minutes to actually make his like presence known in the film. But that's good. I think that the camera work does a really good job of kind of placing you in this carnival to show like how much crowd is there, especially this one scene where we're in a temple and you can feel the shakiness of the camera, and I think that kind of really places how much jostling and how much like movement there would be within this temple. It really makes you know get that great feeling of what it would be like to be in the carnival. And that's again really important because I think for this movie the visual exposition is how you get more and more immersed into the reality of living in Paruthiveeran. Now, one thing I want to point out is that while this film does spend a large amount of time kind of dilly-dallying and giving us an essence of the village, it is interspersed with a lot of important plot points. Like, for instance, let's take this scene that's continuing in the village carnival. where you see like people selling different things, and through the sunglasses shot, you can see that there's a policeman. Now normally, police people existing in a carnival is pretty common. But as you follow this policeman, you realize how much of a full security detail is there for this small carnival. And you start to wonder what is going on? Why is there such a big police force? And right as that happens, there's a full conversation between a passerby and a policeman about exactly this.
ஏப்பா பூரா சட்டி போலீஸே நிறைய வந்திருக்க மந்திரி யார் வராங்களா?
இப்போ அது ஒன்று தான் உங்களுக்கு குறையா தெரியுது. நீங்கள் 4 பேர் ஒன்றா சேர்ந்தாலே தண்ணியை போட்டுட்டு மண்டையை உடச்சிக்கிட்டு திரிவீங்க. இதில் இம்புட்டு பேர். நீங்கள் எப்போ மாமா மச்சான் ஒன்று கூடுறீங்க, எப்போ வெட்டிக்கிட்டு சாவறீங்கன்னு யாருக்கே தெரியும்? உங்களை வச்சு இந்த திருவிழாவை முடிக்கிறதுக்குள்ள எனக்கு போதும் போதும் ஆயிரும். நல்லபடியாக திருவிழாவை முடிச்சுட்டு போங்கயா.
ஏய் நீ என்னப்பா பிடிச்சு அழிச்சுக்கிற?
And with this kind of small talk, we're able to understand the fact that there's a lot of communal tension in this village. And kind of like this is how like a lot of the pieces of information can be gleaned during this beginning shot. Like you can see certain character attributes about characters. Like for instance, Muttarga, she is clearly a very like short-tempered girl, so much so that she gets very upset even if supposing somebody so much as grazes her shoulder for her attention. And then you can also see things like Muthu's father, who is clearly a very biased and prejudiced man, but he also likes his ego being stroked, as you can see as soon as the singers start singing praises for him. His anger gets quelled like that. It's also pretty clear from this intro that the police officers do not like Paruthiveeran and his uncle, because they go out of their way to actually check both these individuals. For good reason, they seem to be carrying weapons to a festival. So I guess it kind of makes sense. But you can kind of add up that these people are maybe part of the family feud that the police officers were talking about in like the previous shots. And with this, they've kind of placed all the characters into where they are in like, a spectrum. And we have a good, at least a somewhat good understanding of who these people are. And so the movie kind of starts actually pacing towards its real plot of the movie. The shift in tone, the shift in music can be realized, even though it's still kind of like temple themed. You can see that it's more vengeful and more angry. And just as that happens, we see Veeran kind of go towards this boxer with a knife in his hand, and then just as he's about to stab him, they cut the shot, but they switch to a coconut being fried open, so you can kind of guess exactly what they were aiming for. And I think that this first scene does a really good job of establishing exactly what kind of film you're in for. It's slow, mostly meandering, but when it says something, it's really, really powerful. And I think the reason for that is probably the editing in this movie is very good. Like, I think it's absolutely brilliant. Let's take the scene that follows the village festival, right? This is a scene of following Mutta around her house and kind of seeing how she gets ready for school. Now, admittedly, the editing in this is kind of invisible, but I think that invisible editing is also really important. Despite the camera being mostly on Muttarga, the surrounding dialogue really gives us a good info dump into what is happening in the dynamics of this house. Like, we're able to gain information about the fact that it's a seemingly normal household, because her mother is trying to get everyone ready by cooking all the breakfast, and all the kids are kind of hurrying around to get ready for school, and the father is maintaining the financial affairs. But despite all of this, you can glean some pieces of information.
நல்லா நடந்துக்கிட்டு இருந்த திருவிழாவில் அபசகுணம் மாதிரி இப்படி குட்டி புட்டாயலேப்பா. இந்த பருத்தி வீரனும் செவ்வாழையும் பண்ற அநியாயம் தாங்க முடியல.
என்ன சந்தனமா தடவர இல்லடா.
இவங்க அக்கா போருக்கு எப்பதான் ஒரு முடிவு வரப்போகுது?
For instance, it seems like the information about the stabbing is still kind of in the front of everyone's mind in this. like you can see the father asking about it. And then number two, you can also see that Mutaragi doesn't seem to hold her mother in that high regard.
இட்லி சுட்டு காஞ்சி போய் கிடக்கு தின்னாம என்ன பண்ணிக்கிட்டு இருக்கா அப்புறம் காலில் சக்கரத்தை கட்டிட்டு வந்து நிப்பா முத்தலகே முத்தலகே கத்திக்கிட்டு இருக்கேன் காதுல விழுகல.
Look at this shot, for instance. Clearly, she's yelling, she's calling for her, but she doesn't care. She's just going around getting ready instead of actually paying attention or even notifying her mother that she'll be there in a second, you know. And then the other thing, as she's leaving for school, you can see her interact with some direct relatives of the stab victim. So it kind of gives us this information that, you know, her father is a well-respected individual in the village. Now, it should be noted that not only is the invisible editing that just kind of keeps the continuity in the film very good, I think the more obvious transitions and things like that are also really good in this movie. Like, let's go through the rest of the film. The next scene, he also still continues to follow Muttaraga's point of view. And thus she lies to her parents about going to school, but instead goes to see Paruthiveeran's arrest. As she walks back home, kind of disheartened by his arrest, the film quite literally gives us a walk through memory lane to explain why she likes Paruthiveeran so much. Now, the transition from to black and white is really obvious. And that kind of is to present this as a memory. But I also think that there are other editing choices that were made in this scene that are kind of interesting. One of them being the use of split screen. Now, why would they use that? Well, typically split screen is used to show two different point of views. But we are quite clearly following Muttaraga's point of view in this situation. So to me, this kind of gives me that feeling of she's analyzing this memory because she's gone through it in her head so many times. And maybe she's thinking about how, you know, he would have approached her, how Veeran would have approached her in her childhood, why he approached her like this. Because she clearly has no way of knowing this, but I think it's kind of her analyzing her memories instead of just walking through them. Now, I want to be very clear here and say that I don't think that the story is the strong suit of this movie. Okay, seriously guys, put your pitchforks down. I know, let me explain. Seriously, pitchforks down. Alright, okay. So, let's look at the next scene, which is about Paruthiveeran going to court for his crimes. It was kind of at this point that I realized that this movie has a pretty generic plot. I mean, it's essentially about two characters falling in love in a village amidst a turf war. And I feel like every element in that story has been done before. I mean, caste war, we've seen it. Realities of village life, we've seen it. Rich girl falls in love with poor guy. Have you guys not watched any movie in the last 70 years? All of these are really not that new to us. But I think where this film differs is the fact that it takes characters that are inherently unlikable and sort of presents them to us and makes us want to follow them. Like seriously, look at the next scene. Paruthiveeran gets bail, and literally the first thing he does after getting bail is he gets drunk. And then in his drunken stupor, tells his uncle this.
சித்தப்பா எனக்கு ஒரு ஆசை சித்தப்பா.
என்னடா மோனே?
இந்த கமுதி கோர்ட்டு மதுரை ஜெயிலு ஒரே மாதிரி போர் அடிக்குது சித்தப்பா. இங்க பாரு இங்க பாரு இங்க பாரு. பெருசா ஏதாவது பண்ணிவிட்டு சாகிறதுக்குள்ள ஒரே ஒரு தடவை மெட்ராஸ் ஜெயில பாத்துறேன் சித்தப்பா.
That's not the end. After that, he proceeds to steal a lady of the night from truck drivers at knife point and then does as he pleases with her. Literally, not a single one of these things is something that a main character that we expect to root for should be doing. So then, why do we still continue to watch this film? Well, I think because the tone and the setting of this movie kind of want us to feel like this is who Viren is, like this is how he defines himself, you know, without doing all these stupid things, he wouldn't be Paruthiveeran. And I think that's why we're willing to accept some of the, um, I want to say, eccentricities, if that's the right word, um, for, you know, who he is. And this kind of morally bankrupt, chaotic nature follows you throughout the movie. I think that is where the focus is, and that's why this movie has a relatively simple story. I think Amir wanted that focus to be on the characters instead of on the story itself. And I feel like that's kind of where my focus also ended up going. Because if I look at my notes for this movie, I realized that the story aspects of my notes became increasingly vague from this point, and that's because I got really sucked into the rawness and the, um, you know, the the feel, or like I don't know how to put it, but the elements of the film. Let's put it that way. And I think that the reason why that is because this movie can now take that and make the audience increasingly uncomfortable until the end of the climax. And it kind of breaks your walls, or the walls you've put up for yourself, um, with these kind of shots. Like, let's take this scene, for example. So, after we get a somewhat subtle shot kind of showing us how Muttarga's father has discovered her escapades with uh, Paruthiveeran, we realize that they're all waiting for her at home to kind of address this issue, so to speak. Just realized that my wardrobe has been open this whole time. Whoops. Alright. We realized that everyone in the family is completely livid with Muttarda because she has gone against their caste, she has gone against their family values, and they're all waiting patiently for her to come home. And again, we kind of get the same standard response from Muttar.
கூப்பிடுறேன்.
ஏ முத்தலகே, இங்க வாடி. கூப்பிடுறத காதுல விளையலையா? வாடிங்க.
என்ன
ஊர் சுத்தி கலந்த பள்ளிக்கூடம் மாமா இவ்வளவு நேரம் எங்கடி சுத்திட்டு வர?
ஸ்கூலுக்கு போகாமியா? ஸ்கூல் முடிஞ்சு அங்க இருக்க நீ வீட்டுக்கு போயிட்டு வர.
ஏன் போய் சொல்ற?
உனக்கு யார் சொன்னா நான் ஸ்கூலுக்கு போலன்னு?
பப்பேலடி சொன்னாரு.
தெரியல, தெரிஞ்ச ஒவ்வொரு தடவையும் கேட்டுட்டே இருப்பீங்களா?
Kind of showing that she's not really going to bend for her parents. But this is the point where her dad absolutely loses it. He goes full batshit insane, starts beating the shit out of her, and it's very, very uncomfortable, to put it mildly. I mean, we can feel every bang. We can feel every step. We can feel him hitting her with that umbrella. It just seems so raw and uncomfortable. And I think that that's something that the film wanted. And I really appreciate that level of authenticity that this movie has. And I think this discomfort helps you simply accept the characters for who they are. So here's another scene where Veera goes to jail for doing something stupid again. In this case, cutting off a constable's ear. So Muthu's father decides this is the perfect opportunity to get my daughter married off to someone, and this is the exact chance I've been waiting for. So he plans the engagement, and just as he plans the engagement, you see that Muthu has drunk. And as you vaguely recall her threat to herself in case she wasn't married off to Veera, you watch this scene of all the family members struggling to save her. And they finally do, and they get her to all the poison out, and you get this very gross shot of her pretty much onto the camera. And I think at this point, all of my defenses were completely gone. None of my shields were up, and I was just like, all right, movie, take me, tell me where you're going with this. And at this point, I think the movie also knew that that's where I was, because we're presented with a scene where Mutaraga's defenses also break down. It starts perfectly with this shot, this POV shot of her once again looking like a hindrance to Veera, and just as you expect her to kind of yell at him, she suddenly changes and turns her anger to Sabare, and then you're wondering, okay, where is this going? And perfectly multiple angle shot of her getting smacked and thrown into a puddle. Um, I have no idea what to expect here, and Priyamani's performance here is absolutely brilliant. Um, she completely cracks. Her anger, her want, her desire to kind of keep all of her sadness in is gone. She just breaks down fully, and it's a brilliant performance from both sides. You can see Karthi struggling to understand, um, you know, how much she cares for her, along with his internal struggle to kind of keep her away from all of this, you know, problems. And you can also see Mutaraga's struggle to want to remain angry and sort of maintain her facade of being a very strong individual, but also it's difficult to keep it all together when she's getting attacked from both sides, as she says herself. Truly, I think that this is a very monumental scene in this movie. Now, I want to point out that personally, I think that this single crying session should not have been enough to switch Veera from not liking her or pretending to not like her to completely accepting her, because I just think that he's more obstinate as a person. But I still think that it's a good changing point for the film, because we are quite late into the movie already, and we still haven't gotten, you know, any sense of response from him. So slightly convenient and maybe starting to feel a little mechanical, but still, I've completely forgotten about that, considering the fluidity of the acting. Now, I have criticized this movie a lot for its story, but I'm gonna give it some points here. I feel like one of the important things that I liked in this movie is that, unlike a lot of other films, I feel like a lot of the dialogue and the words and the actions of the characters actually do pile up and form a major hurdle in the climax of this movie. Major spoiler warning, but here we go. So there are three things that actually get called back in the climax of this film. So as I'm watching this scene, where Paruthiveeran goes to his uncle to ask for Muthu's hand in marriage and is expected, a fight breaks out. You hear this one dialogue from Paruthiveeran.
விடு, என்ன செய்ய போறேன்? நான் வேணான்னு விலகி போனதுக்கு நீதான் நினைச்சா தப்பு இல்ல, வாழ்ந்தா உங்களோட தான் வசனம் எல்லாம் பேசுனேன். இந்தாரு, இப்ப நீ முழுசா எனக்குள்ள வந்துட்ட. இனிமே ஆத்தாளுக்கும் கூட பேசுறது பிடிக்கல, என் அப்ப என் கௌரவம் போயிரும். அதனால நான் அவங்க சொல்றது தான் கேட்பேன். அப்படி இப்படின்னு ஏதாவது திருகல் பண்ணி விலகலாம் நினைச்ச, உன்னை வெட்டி கொன்னே போட வேண்டிய. சும்மா சொல்றேன்னு நினைக்காத, கண்டம் துணவா வெட்டி ஞாபகம் வச்சுக்க. வேடிக்கை பாக்குற விளக்கண்ணைகளா, நீங்க தானே இருக்கலாம் சாட்சி. நீ இறக்கலன்னா வேற எவனுக்கு மேலடி.
Now, this, along with a bunch of other things that have already happened, are probably the three big callbacks that happen in the climax of this movie. Number one, and the most obvious, is the fact that the people who Priyamani are the same people that Viran stole, their transaction lady. I'm trying to be very did bad wordy in this as much as possible, but I hope you know who I mean. So they basically her to get revenge on him for stealing a woman from them. Um, and while they think she's just, a lady of the night, um, obviously she's not. She's actually his lover. The second thing that gets a call back in this, which already I felt like got a call back once in this film, is the fact that Mutharga is very adamant about only wanting to, be with Paruthiveeran. She's very obstinate about her chastity, to the point where she has promised herself and she's vowed that she will only, lose her virginity to him. And while I think that they did a pretty unsubtle thing here of calling back her dialogue and all of that when she dies, I think it's a good callback overall. Number three is the fact that in this scene he has threatened to, and that is exactly what happens in the end, because he doesn't know how to protect her now clearly body from her father, and he wants to hide that fact to kind of protect her, so he opts for the I'm a lunatic types and completely, so that there is no chance of them ever figuring out that this is what happened to her. I think that all these three things make me realize that while a lot of people might look at this as a turf war or like a caste battle or like a tragic love story, I think that what I truly believe this movie is trying to tell us is that actions have consequences, and you need to be careful when you're making decisions, because even a seemingly inconsequential thing can come back and bite you in the ass at the end. And I think that's actually a very powerful statement for a movie to make. So yeah, I'm gonna leave you guys here before I spoil the rest of the movie and also you all get bored of my rambling, which I know probably already happened. Definitely a recommend from me for all of you who have stuck and watched this review. Please go rewatch it and let me know what other things you have learned or gleaned from this film, and leave them in the comments below. Be sure to like and subscribe, and type what other things you want me to review in the comments. Bye. So yeah, completely lost track of what I was saying. Right, I was talking about this thing. Okay,